Hello and welcome to the show where we spill the tea on the real estate scene in the six. Today we're tackling the top 10 mistakes we've seen sellers make when trying to unload their Toronto properties. We've got you covered from overpriced homes that make buyers run to the hills to neglecting those pesky repairs that could cost you big bucks. So grab your double-double, sit back, and get ready to learn how to avoid the 10 most common typical seller slip-ups. It's week 3 of April 2023. We are Fox Marin Associates, Toronto's most innovative and active brokerage in central and downtown Toronto. We aren't here to regurgitate boring stats. You can find those anywhere. We are here to share what we are seeing going on in the Toronto real estate market in real time on a weekly basis so that you can be in the know and make informed decisions. If you're interested in getting an up-to-the-moment opinion on what's happening in Toronto real estate right now and learning what's going down, boots on the ground before it becomes a stat, then you're in the right place. My name's Ian Busher. I'm a broker with the FM team. Joining me today, as always, keep her number handy. This is Kori Marin, in-house hype girl and resident expert listing broker. And, of course, Mr. Ralph Fox, our analytical investor-driven listing broker. No, our analytical investor-driven macro picture watcher is what I meant to say. It wouldn't be real. It wouldn't be true if there weren't bloopers like that for you. We do this every week, so hit that subscribe button and join us for the latest updates every 7 days. Don't forget to subscribe. We need you to subscribe. Please, we love you. Today, we'll share our expertise on the 10 biggest mistakes sellers make when selling real estate properties in Toronto. Whether you're a first-time buyer or a seasoned pro, you won't want to miss these valuable insights. Leaving money on the table. Talk to me about that, the cost of neglecting home staging and styling.
Okay, so seller mistake number 1, not staging and styling. This is a massive mistake. For those of you who are familiar with us, we are very much invested in the process of staging and styling a process when we are marketing a property to sell so that the sellers can get the highest and best price for their property. And this is not to trick buyers. This is not to pull the wool over the properties, and try to showcase something that it's not. It's meant to highlight the property at its best. And we can do this in various different ways. So we can stage a property from top to bottom. We can work with sellers and their current furniture and work with a hybrid approach and style what they currently have and work with that. Or we might not do anything at all if they have beautiful artwork and furniture, and we might just do a little bit of zhuzhing, as we like to call it. But it truly is in the seller's best interest to do this. We're trying to create an emotional connection with the buyer. We're telling a story to the potential purchasers out there. Their photography is going to look way, way better when it's staged and styled. Their video is going to look exceptionally much better when it's staged and styled. And this doesn't just include furniture and art and decor pieces. This includes everything that's happening behind all of that too, including your paint colors, your minor repairs, your fixing your crooked kitchen cabinets, for example, possibly switching out the hardware in your kitchen, those light fixtures. All of these things will engage the buyer. It gives the feeling that the property is worth more than it is, and it helps buyers understand the space. So we're just doing that work for them by showcasing a beautiful property that has all those finer details already worked out on behalf of the buyer, so they're not stressed and thinking about these considerations, and they can focus on the home. Throw some white paint on the wall, change the hardware, bring in some contemporary furniture, some flowers, some plants, and then voila, this property looks exceptional. And we might end up in a bidding war for it. It's a big time mistake for sellers not to look at working with a team brokerage or a realtor that works with stagers or has a staging inventory that they have in-house.
It's kind of where to start and where to end. But I think the key thing in sales, and this is a moniker that we always talk about, is people buy on emotion and then they justify with logic afterwards.
Yes.
And there is no more emotional purchase than real estate, than buying your home. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that's more personal than that. Mm-hmm. And so the ability to create that emotional connection from the second somebody steps in the door can be worth sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And spaces have energy and spaces tell stories. And when you walk into a space with low energy, low connection, no story, it's flat,
No soul. Yeah.
no soul, then people really don't see the property to its highest potential from their own point of view. And that's the magic of staging, is being able to create that connection and have an individual paint their own story by enabling them with the condition of the property being at its highest and best. And so there's nothing more important than how you present a property. And I think every seller deserves to have their property shown at its highest and best light when going to market. And there's a reason why certain properties sell above record prices and others don't. And others don't even sell. And so you definitely don't want to be in the latter. And it's really interesting because when you walk through spaces, houses, condos, with your clients, and you see the way they connect to the property, where they're heavily connecting is that the staged properties. And so that's really just the most important thing. And one of the interesting things that I didn't know until we got so heavily into staging ourselves is furniture, actually well-placed furniture, well-staged properties can actually feel significantly bigger than an empty room or house or condo. And so it helps you feel the size in scale, and it gives the ability to say, oh, well, where would the TV go? Or where would such and such go? So I think unequivocally, and I've seen stats where, I mean, I don't know where these numbers come from, but staged properties or well-staged properties can sell 18 to 25% more than, or certainly faster as well, than unstaged properties. But the other thing is there's also a difference between well-staged properties and poorly staged properties. And when you walk into a property and you see it's been staged, early 2000 style, you walk in and you see that and you become distracted because the staging is so bad that it then becomes really hard to see the property. And when you have, it's just, you don't even know where to look, but you know that you're in some type of a weird time machine that you don't want to be in. So, having that emotional connection, making that first impression, tugging at heartstrings, making it easy for somebody to see themselves living in the property and what that life could be like. That's how record sales happen, and that's where all the magic is. And so why anybody would consider going to market at any point in time in Toronto without wanting to have the magic is absolutely beyond me, other than the fact that they probably weren't educated or knew any better.
Focus on what you're there for, right?
Yes.
That's what you want those buyers doing when they go through.
And I think the other point really to be thinking about is everything happens online, and it's kind of like, we use the analogy like swapping through Tinder, left, right, well, when they're swiping through looking at properties. And so how you strike somebody with the photography based on how a property shows while it's being photographed and then when it's being marketed online, that could be the decision right there. Because at the end of the day, you're only looking for one buyer. You might get 20 offers, but it's that one buyer. They swipe the wrong way. The consequences of that could be significant on offer night, and could be the difference between selling even and not selling. And so when you're going to market, you want to cast that wide net, and you want to do it with your best foot forward right out of the gate. If I bought it for 1.3 and the market says it's worth 1.5 and I put in 300,000 in renos, well, it's worth 1.8. You're not getting 1.8. And so usually I like to use the rule of thumb, especially with sellers when they're getting their properties ready for sale in that short interim period. The rule of three, meaning that if you spend $1, you should be looking for a $3 return on the property. And then anything less than that, you start to really want to consider, is the work worth it, and is it important? Another example would be people considering digging out their basements and doing a lot of work subground. Very hard to get your money back, or if you can get your money back, it's very hard to make a profit significant profit on something like that versus an extension versus even something as simple as a backsplash. So we're always very cognitive from a seller's standpoint in terms of the resale value to be added when doing renovations. And it's something you really, really got to be careful of when you own a property, making sure you don't cross that threshold unintentionally.
It needs to be said, keep your decisions, if you know you're going to be selling soon, relatively neutral. Right? Don't do really bold individual things.
Oh my God,
right? And if
don't.
you want to do that with something that's easy to change, like paint.
Yes.
Right? But don't install things that will cost just as much to remove. And if your buyer doesn't like them.
Don't get too specific with your design unless you're going to be staying there for like many years. Of course, go to town, like represent yourself. Like I love that, like push the envelope. But if you're thinking about selling, you got to stay neutral and stay with what's on trend and just be on the safer side. Like everyone likes grays and whites and like no one's going to be offended. Don't go out there and do like lime green backsplashes and like just crazy stuff that people do, especially even more in a condo building where they're like, to Ralph's point, like there's going to be a cap on price per square foot, and it's really not difficult to like figure out the value of a condo based on just a simple formula of price per square foot. So if you go crazy with your design and hire an architect and do all this stuff and put herringbone floors in and all this, you're not going to get it back.
Remember that finishes that are that bold also have like a very short lifespan. Moving along, number 3, and you guys can fight over who wants to start on this one. The high cost of overvaluing your property.
Oh.
This is Kori for sure. This is Kori's name on it.
What I am speaking to personally, what I've seen happen with a lot of clients is once their property is properly painted, repaired, staged, styled, photographed, and marketed, all of a sudden they think their place is worth like $100,000 more than we initially had suggested the range might be. And so then we have to be like, no, this was like the range we felt it was worth if you stage, style, and repair and do all of the things we suggest. And then what happens with a well-marketed property is that sellers all of a sudden get an inflated sense of value when they get a lot of appointments booked. A lot of people attend the open house. There's lots of inquiries. A lot of status certificates go out, or a lot of home inspections go out. And then all of a sudden, over the week or two they're on the market, they've decided that their place is worth like 100,000, 200 more than we initially talked about. And so then the offer night comes around and they get really greedy about it. And I'm like, what? They're like, an offer will come in within the range that we anticipated and they're not happy. I'm like so confused by this. So this sort of inflated sense of value is very typical. And so we have to do a lot of coaching around this from the get-go to ensure that people understand that expectation within that range is based on them completing all of their tasks and us showcasing the property at its highest and best. And this is the range we anticipate. If you don't do any of those things, we should be looking at the bottom end of your range. That's where we should be spending our time. So that's what I feel when you say over inflated sense of value. That is my first instinct about that.
So just basically getting overly cocky about what they've got,
Yes.
right? And thinking it's worth too much. Yeah.
Everyone, almost everyone.
I see here too, we have in the notes, the first offer is often the best. Tell me a little bit about that and what that means.
Ralph, this is so you.
I think what I said earlier is real estate is a very emotional process. And you can look at past sales to understand a price range of expected sale of a property and value. And I think that is very logical. But going back to what Kori was saying is that people start to see their property in a light probably with which they never got to see their property, which is its best light. And then they start to get cocky, feeling that all of the rationale that led us to want to do all of the upgrades to get the property to its highest and best, now emotionally means that the property is worth more than what was rationally discussed at the beginning of our discussions. And so it becomes a really interesting dynamic where people start to feel, well, it looks so great and we've got a whole bunch of showings and now we have an offer at full list price that we've underpriced the property and the property is worth more
every time
than the list price. And what I don't think sellers in that moment can understand is if your property is marketed to its highest and best and it's priced perfectly, then somebody who's been looking for a while, more than likely who's lost out on multiple offer scenarios, understands that value and they're ready to pay top dollar because they don't want to lose out on that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And if you lose those buyers, you may never find anybody else who sees the value or appreciates the value of this property as much as they do, given their personal situation. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really, really important to remind yourself as a seller why you went into this process and what your expectations were, not just on the presentation of the property, but its ultimate sale price. And so typically somebody who the first mover to come in on a property, not always, there's exceptions, a lot of exceptions to a lot of different rules, but we really find that motivated first buyer who's coming in really, really early, hot and heavy, that meets your expectations, not in an offer scenario where you're holding off on offers, but an offer anytime scenario where your price probably slightly higher than the property's worth. If they're meeting that, then it's probably a good indication that that's a great offer and to probably take that offer and run.
Yes. Mm-hmm. If an offer comes in on those 2 days within that first 24 hours, that's when sellers start to really, really, truly feel like it's underpriced. Mm-hmm. And those are the best buyers. That's when you know everything has been done perfectly when that happens. And it's happened so many times.
Yeah, that's very different from a scenario where you've priced it low and are holding off on offers.
Yes.
And you receive what's known as a preemptive offer, which I think we can talk about a little bit later. But you just have to understand in the scenario where you're taking offers anytime and it's priced right and marketed right, that first buyer is your best friend, whether you want to admit it or not.
Yes.
Yeah, they're either experienced, getting great guidance, or both, and they're watching that area or building like a hawk, and that's why they're there with a big check on day one. Yeah, yes. They know exactly what they're doing, and yeah, sellers absolutely should take that very, very seriously and not get cocky, like I said earlier, right? Don't get full of yourself. Because if you turn that down, right, that could be the strongest one you've got, and things might slow down on day 3, day 4. So
totally.
What's an agent situation that you want to stay away from?
It's really, really important as a seller when you work with a listing agent is to make sure that they truly have their finger on the pulse and can understand submarkets, can understand how they operate, and can understand in real time how they are responding to things that are happening in the market and in the economy in real time, so that if you need to shift strategies, you can do so at any point in time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real miss. And I often see situations and I'm just nodding my head going, wow, if only they knew. And so you never want to be they/them in those situations. Mm-hmm. So making sure that you're working with, and the reason why I think team fits in here is when you have a team, they have a wider net of real-time information that's always going around, because by the time you've seen, and this is part of the reason why we're doing this podcast, is that by the time you've seen the stats, it's too late. It's over. Mm-hmm. The stats so are fast. 2 months ago. Having that type of real-time intel is so important. Never been more important, and I think the importance of that will continue well into the future as things continue to shift really quick.
Ralph, you mentioned talking about bully offers a little bit later, so I'm going to direct this question at you. Our next point is actually about not being a pushover, not caving to a bully offer. So first, by definition, what is a preemptive or bully offer?
So we'll take a step back and
Okay.
we'll talk about a scenario where a seller holds off on offers, meaning that a property normally would come out on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, usually at the beginning of the week. And they would say clearly on the listing and in their communications with other agents that we will not be accepting, we will not be reviewing offers till generally at some point the following week. And it's at a prescribed date and time. So a preemptive offer is when somebody submits an offer with the intent of trying to jump the line and acquire the property ahead of bidding date. And the reason why they do this is because they know that if they wait till the following week, there could be a lot more offers and competition, and they're trying to see if they can get it right here, right now at a price that could be a better price for them than they may have to pay in the future. And I cannot tell you how many times we've seen a scenario where somebody wants to submit a bully or a bully offer, a preemptive offer comes in, we reject it, and then the following week, that same buyer, that same agent will come back even higher. And so if somebody really is that motivated and they really love your property and they really want to move forward with it, they'll wait the 5 or 6 days. They'll probably pay more than they're offering as well. So in most instances where we've actually physically seen the number or hear the numbers tossed out as a preemptive, they're generally considerably higher the following week. And they don't disappear either. It's not like you generally lose them. They generally do show up on offer day. Mm-hmm. In a market that we're seeing right now where, yes, you're getting a lot of activity and a lot of offers on especially low-rise properties, you're not seeing those crazy smashing numbers. So you're going to be best off to wait and see what happens on offer day. And if you can't get that magic number that would allow you to sell the property, then you re-strategize and go to market, relist the following day at a higher price.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would just like to add in here that you lose all your leverage of competition when you accept a bully offer. The idea is if you're going to list low and have an offer date, you want multiple offers to drive the price up. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this in former episodes, but like when people are in competition, they're willing to pay more when they know there's somebody else that wants what they want. It's all about the FOMO. Mm-hmm. You want to have multiple people biting. That's how you drive the price up. So sellers, you're crazy to consider a bully offer unless it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Wait until the offer date. Like I know it's just like right there. So you're just like, please let me just take this and this whole process will be done because it's stressful as hell. Mm-hmm. Totally get that. But wait. And the other point of this, and I don't want to get too complicated in terms of like the administration aspects of bully offers. However, if you do consider sellers a bully offer, this can trigger a whole other slew of stuff that you're going to have to deal with. So if there is a bully offer registered and you want to take a look at it, then by law, the listing agent has to advise all the buyer agents or anyone who's interested in the property that a bully offer has been registered. And what can happen when you send that communication out to everyone is it can trigger an early offer date. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden you've got all these agents scrambling to submit offers at the last second, and it just turns into a hodgepodge of insanity and craziness and disorganization. Whereas if you had just waited the extra 3 or 4 days, everyone can come in with their clean offers, their deposit checks, they can come in fair and square, and it just makes it so much easier for buyers and their agents. And I kind of feel like it's a more respectful process. Like I love when listing agents say, no, we are not looking at bully offers.
Me too.
And it's like, great. I don't feel stressed. I can bring the buyer in. We can see it more than one time. I'm not feeling like this anticipation that somebody could bring in a bully offer at 1 a.m. on a Friday night when I'm sleeping and then my buyers have lost out. Like this is a fair way of dealing with the bidding war scenario. So it truly is in the seller's best interest not to consider unless, as Ralph mentioned, it's some like out of control number.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Are we good to move on to our next point?
Yes.
Okay. Amazing. The costly consequences of not doing a pre-list inspection. So pre-list inspection meaning that I'm the seller. I have a property. I've hired Fox Marin. They're going to sell that for me. What I'm going to do is hire a inspector to come in and basically disclose any flaws that inspector can find with the property. And why would any seller not want to do one of those? And what's the harm in not doing one of those?
I feel like this is the perfect question for you, being a former contractor and red seal carpenter. Like, you know this better than anyone. So
yeah, Ian, I
run with it.
I think you take the lead here.
Yeah, you're the man.
I ask the questions. I will answer the question. So basically, I think there's several benefits, but I just listed the first most obvious one is basically this is a chance for you as the seller to come clean. So home inspection will cost you anywhere between $500 and $1,000. So sellers will say, well, why would I want to do that? Let the buyers spend their money checking on the house. But the benefit to you is if you do that pre-list inspection a few weeks before your property is ready, you get the chance to correct some of those things that maybe you didn't actually know about yourself. And if there's things that you can't do anything about, like the roof's a little old or the furnace is a little old, but it's still okay, you're sharing that and basically setting yourself up as being an honest seller who's saying, here, listen, we know this isn't perfect, but here are these things for you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer. Take a look at these things and know what you're getting. And I think the other benefit, too, for you as a seller is essentially to save yourself from hours and hours of other inspectors that have been hired by buyers poking around, upsetting things, going into your attic, leaving their dirty fingerprints on all your light switches, and potentially even damaging something from all of the intrusive stuff that they're doing. So those to me, those are the benefits of spending that $500 to $1,000. I mean, ultimately, if there's a problem with the house, you want to know about it and you want to disclose it if you can't fix it, even just for the libel reasons. Did I leave anything out?
And I think it just gives, when there's a pre-list inspection and it's available by email and there's a printed copy on site when you go see the property, it gives buyers confidence in the property. Everything's been disclosed. They can share this with their family members. Their mom and dad can review it. And if that's all out there, they feel that the seller isn't hiding anything. And people feel really paranoid about that, especially first-time home buyers, especially in low rise. And so if they feel like people are trying to cover stuff up, it makes them paranoid. They don't feel as confident about, bidding more aggressively, being in a bidding war, and all of those things. And so even if it's just instinctual and you're not actually logically thinking about it and you're just feeling it, it makes a significant impact on your possible sale price. So sellers, please make the freaking investment.
I mean, with the exception, unless you're selling a property as is, where is, that obviously needs a huge renovation. And, there are exceptions to every rule in real estate, like Ralph said earlier. So that would be the case where maybe it isn't necessary. We all know it's knob and tube. We all know it's asbestos. We all know it's lead.
We're going to rip everything out.
Why are we going to look at it? And right, exactly.
Totally. There is one other point to this, and that is when you're selling a property, you want to make it as easy as possible for a buyer to come in without conditions and to come in with the highest and best offer. And so if you are showing a property, your property's on the market, and you don't have a home inspection, it now means that anybody who is seriously considering offering on the property is going to have to invest $6,000, $7,000, $100,000, $1,000 on a home inspection. And they have the decision, should they spend that money prior to offering on the house?
Yes.
Do they have the time to even do that? Or do they just throw in an offer condition on inspection?
Totally.
Yep.
And so that can create a huge issue with somebody deciding whether they should offer on a property or not, whether they have the time or want to make the upfront investment or offer a conditional offer, which is the worst thing you ever want to see as a seller in Toronto real estate. And so the easiest way you can create the less friction for somebody to offer on a property will result in multiple offers and record sales.
When you do that, it should be with a reputable company as well.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
If you do a pre-list inspection with Joe's Inspection Company, and it's terrible and not thorough and no one knows who that is, that's just as bad as not having one.
Well, we should also add for sellers that when the inspector comes in, they are going to find stuff.
Yes.
Like, sellers should know that their job, no one's house is perfect, especially with the age of the homes in Toronto. And so sellers don't freak out if stuff comes up. Like, you kind of want it to come up so we can clean it up. And like, there is no perfect home inspection. And the job of the inspector is to find stuff and like record it. And Ralph really wants to jump in, I can see.
And that goes both ways for buyers as well. When you're buying an 80-year-old home, there's going to be stuff. Things are going to come up.
Yes.
You know, GFI, what are those called, Dean? GFI, what do you call those?
Receptors.
GFCI? Yeah.
GCI
Ground fault
receptors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these things are going to come up. It's not a new build. You're just looking to make sure that the house isn't going to fall into the ground. Or that there's not any massive surprises. But there's always going to be a small laundry list of items that need to be fixed, pretty much with any house, no matter how diligent the previous owners or sellers are. And that's just something to be prepared for the first time as a buyer you read a home inspection.
If they're experienced reading them and they're getting good guidance, they'll know that there's 10 little things in there. But realistically, what they want to know is, what am I going to have to invest in the first 5 years of ownership of this house? You know what? It should be said here that buyers who are just getting started should probably ask for home inspections, even on properties they're not interested in, and start reading them and start asking questions so they're familiar with them. The perception, our next point, is the perception that the public open houses are the bee's knees.
Looking at websites, researching properties, watching videos, looking at the pictures, looking at the floor plans. They're looking at the comps because they have access to all of this now. And they probably won't leave their house unless they're like super interested in seeing the property. And if they are really interested in seeing the property, they are going to book a private showing with their buyer agent to go see the property alone without 40 other people all around them between 2 and 4 on a Saturday and Sunday, who are generally neighbors that are snooping, people who are bored and have nothing else to do, or like relatives or anything like that, or like agents that just happen to be in the area. These are not necessarily at public open houses the people that will probably most likely purchase your property. And so sellers get this really, really, really excited on Saturday and Sunday open houses. Like, they think this is the bee's knees of selling the property. Like, so they're not a bad thing. I definitely think they're part of the marketing process. I definitely think they're worth doing. I think there's a lot of agents that have busy weekend schedules on Saturdays and Sundays that cannot make private appointments and send their clients to the open house so that they can at least get a feel for the property. They're certainly not a waste of time by any means, but they are not the be all and end all. Your buyer is likely going to come from a private showing with their buyer agent. Don't get too pumped about it.
Yep, absolutely. Is it fair to say that it's actually, oftentimes it's realtors who benefit, because realtors are actually there to find people who actually don't have agents? It's realtors who will benefit from open houses more than the seller benefits from the public going through the open house.
Good point.
Which is why some selling agents are all excited about doing them for you.
That's a really good point. And so, yeah, that's so true. And that's why new agents are often encouraged to host open houses on behalf of other agents so that they can prospect and try to sell their services and try to find those buyers that are not represented. So that is certainly not top of mind for me personally when I'm doing an open house. Like, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just thinking about selling the property and my job.
Same. Yeah.
But I definitely think, yes, you're totally right with that, Ian. That's a very good point.
Sorry, Ralph, go ahead.
Well, I think it just goes back to what Kori was saying is most qualified buyers are booking private appointments with their agents.
Yes.
So where the opportunity is for a listing agent or another agent on a team or from another brokerage or same brokerage volunteering to do an open house, is sometimes you'll meet those people who are just starting out their search and just sort of doing a reconnaissance of the market or the neighborhood. And those are the opportunities to hopefully find a new client, a new buyer client. But typically that does not induce a sale of the property with which you are running the open house specifically for. And so if you're a seller, while it's good to do an open house, we really want to impress upon our sellers that this is not where the buyer is going to come from, and this is not how the property is going to ultimately sell.
And I was also going to say, Ralph, further to your point as well, those young people who come in on Saturday or Sunday and are just getting their feet wet. They're just checking out a property because they're walking by. They're thinking about reaching out to a mortgage broker. They're thinking about talking to their parents about some help with the down. They're not going to be ready for that offer date on Monday or Tuesday. No. They are not the buyer for this property. No. There's too many hurdles for them. No. It's nice for them to come and see it, but yeah, you're not missing out by not having them there. So
exactly.
My next question / point is the devil's in the details. What you kind of you can shit yourself in the foot, to use a joke from a previous episode, if you don't do the small repairs.
Yes.
Right? Making sure that you, and this kind of factors into our home inspection chat too, but making sure that you hit up all those little things that you can do before you go to market.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that, please.
Well, we've talked about this in former episodes as well, as we give our sellers a laundry list of tasks to complete. Mm-hmm. And these are all the small things that give the buyers the confidence that the property is well maintained. And this is for condos, condo townhouses, and for low rise. So every seller out there, multifamily, I don't care what you are, this applies to everybody across the board, all asset classes, and all price points. So get on those small details, because this is where everything adds up. This is where a property shines. This is where people get a good feeling and intuition about a property when it's well maintained. So if you have gross grout in your bathroom, it looks disgusting, first of all. And like, if it's cleaned up and white again, it just makes everything feel new. If you have something that's like a light fixture that's like falling off the wall, get it reattached properly. Please paint your property. Like, I cannot, smell. If you want to repulse people, have a disgusting smelling place. Like, a fresh coat of paint takes away all of your personal smell. Like your cooking smell, your smoky smell, your weed smell, whatever other smell is happening there. Like, please paint your place. It makes everything feel clean. It gives that first impression that Ralph was talking about when you walk in.
Those little details instill confidence in the character of the sellers and in the care that they took of the property, and in how it will be delivered on closing, and how livable it will be and enjoyable it will be without having to do a lot of things that should be done well up front.
Our second to last point, playing the market, the dangerous game of testing your home's selling potential.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Kori, do you want to tell me a little bit about?
Okay, this is a really stupid thing, sellers. Again, this is all about dumb mistakes sellers could make, and this is a big one. Actually, should have been at the front almost. And so this is when a seller is like, I just want to test the market and see what their place is worth and what they could get for it. And I'm like, dumb idea. And this is the reason being is that every time you list a property on MLS, it makes a footprint, and there's a history about your property on MLS that we can see forever. So if you're like, my house is worth $1 million, but I want to see if I can catch 1.5 for it, and I'm just going to put it on the market and see what happens, and it doesn't sell, guess what? We can see that as agents on the back end of MLS forever.
It's a scar.
And ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a scar with a story, and you end up looking like an asshole, and you look greedy, and it's really obvious.
Or like you just don't know what you're doing.
Like you don't know what you're exactly.
Right? Yeah, it's maybe not even arrogance. It's just like, what? This makes no sense.
So sellers, please, you've got to be really smart about this, because there is a record out there that we can all track and see. And it does not give, and you know what? Buyers can see a lot of this now on all of these apps. So they can see all of this too, not necessarily in the same detail we can as brokers, but they can see a lot of it. So this does not give people confidence about your property when you play the market this way. So you're better off, if you really, really, really want to test it, you're better off doing what's called a pocket listing or an exclusive listing, where you are open for business, but you're not publicly advertising on the MLS system, and you're just privately networking through agents, which is a very challenging thing to do because we don't have a broad system to communicate that exclusive listing anymore. So, but if you do want to experiment and like play around with the market this way, an exclusive or a pocket listing, which we could talk about in another episode, would be the only way that we would recommend that you do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You only get one chance to make a first impression, and it should be good, and it should be accurate.
And smart, exactly.
Yeah. Point number 10,
Yeah.
getting greedy between sold and firm.
what happens is you sell your property, you have an accepted offer, it's firm, you have a deposit check, either there's no condition or conditions are waived, you have a firm and binding contract, and you close in 6 weeks. And very interesting sometimes the communication that can go back and forth between the buyer and seller. And there are two things that I believe in life. One is karma, and the other is goodwill. Not all sellers, or people for that matter, believe in such things, or maybe one of two, or maybe none. And oftentimes they can be inspired by other things. And so it's very interesting where you have a scenario where somebody has a house that on the best possible day, if all the stars lined up, it should sell for 1.8. Please, please, please. But more than likely, it's probably going to be like a 1.6 to 1.7 kind of scenario.
Okay.
And now you sold the house for $2 million.
Oh.
And the buyer has inquired about your baby gates and
One security camera.
the nest.
Yes. Yeah.
And the accoutrements that go with the vacuum, what's that vacuum thing?
Central vac?
Yeah, the accoutrements that go with the central
You do a lot of vacuuming, Ralph.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not too experienced in that category, but the seller responds saying that'll be $17,000. And you're like, okay, you just made an extra $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 tax free on your principal residence. These very nice people came in with a clean offer and have been very gracious in all their communications. Is it really worth the risk of karma and goodwill between now and closing? Because things can come up on the other side just as easily as on your side. Is really, really, really now the time to get a little greedy? And it's interesting in our business because you can really see people's philosophy on life or point of view. And some sellers are so gracious and they're like, oh my gosh, they can just have everything. Like we're leaving, we're going to a new property. They paid us a great price. We're so happy. We're so grateful. And, you know, those are a lot of the scenarios where you're like, okay, this is great. It's a true win-win. But sometimes you have to go back and you're like, yeah, that nest and those baby gates, we want $17,000 for them. Why? Just say they're not for sale.
Oh my God,
just say
it's the
we're
worst.
getting them. And then everybody gets their backs up and everybody pulls their guns out and egos come up and it's all just needless.
Yep.
Take the W and move on and pass the karma and the goodwill on.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to stay grounded from the time you've sold the property firm till closing. And, you know, some of our sellers, they'll write out these extendo lists and paint colors and paint swaps and all the warranties in alphabetical order, paint swipes in alphabetical order, with a note and a bottle of wine. And I mean, that's as a seller.
That's the way you do it.
That's how you want to close a deal. Yeah.
And that's as a buyer who you want to deal with as a seller.
Totally.
And so always think about the other person's perspective. And when somebody's graciously purchased your property at a great price, especially, be nice.
Just be nice. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I know. And then also the other smart thing about it is like shit actually comes up after the deal closes.
Yes.
So like the dishwasher leaks or like stuff always happens. I don't know what stuff happens. We've had like freaking trees come and crash into people's backyards before. Like we have a million stories about what's happened after closing. But if you've handled this whole process as a partnership between the seller and the buyer, and then something small comes up after closing, the buyer is going to be so awesome about it. They're not going to like start writing threatening letters to their real estate lawyer and like threatening to sue. They're going to be like, it's a dishwasher. No big deal. Like it's like, it just creates a more seamless closing on so many levels. So please, sellers listening, just don't be an asshole at
Yep.
this stage. This is where you actually should rise above and go over and above. And we have a couple sellers like this, and they just do the cutest thing for the buyers when they close. And it's just the nicest way for the transaction to just seamlessly end. And I totally agree, Ralph. Good karma.
For us,
Amen.
For us as agents of buyers and sellers, the way that you want to leave this is the day after the closing day. You want to know that this went so smoothly that if the buyer or the seller says to you, listen, it's over now, we actually don't need you, would the seller or the buyer mind if we had their email address? So if we have a question about something, we can write to them. And you as the agent representing one side or the other say, as far as I'm concerned, I am absolutely fine with that. Everybody was respectful. Everybody was decent. I don't see this falling apart. I know I've got people all the way around this deal that are going to be awesome to each other. And
Yes.
I'd love for the buyer to email the seller and say, hey, listen, there's an envelope here from the government that looks pretty important. I'll leave it in the mailbox. Come and pick it up whenever you want.
A brown envelope?
Yeah, a brown envelope from
not
the
the
CRA.
brownies.
Not the brown
exactly.
envelope.
I felt my heart rate go up.
Everybody just had a minor, not the brown one.
Not
Or
the brown
vice
one,
versa.
no.
Your Amazon package went to the wrong place or,
Totally.
right? Like back and forth, things like that. So, yeah, that's how you want to end a deal, for sure. Nicely done, folks. Thank you for that. We are the Fox Marin team in Toronto, doing real estate right. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Kori, what should people do? Should they contact us?
They can contact us. We're
Why?
nice.
Because we're nice. Because we're nice.
We're not assholes.
Good. We have good karma, and we hand out
Yes.
good karma. Yeah.
Yes.
At least we try.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll see everybody next week, and thank you for watching.
Thank you so much. If you
Bye-bye.
have any questions or comments, put them in the comments.
So for
Try it
those of
again.
you at home, just smash that subscribe button.
Subscribe button. There's no subscribe button.
All right.
my God.
I
It
guess
was-
we're nice.
Thanks for
Good to see
watching,
you
everybody.
guys. Thanks so much.